4 minutes past 2 from the studios of Adabai 8.9 FM. Good afternoon and welcome to today's edition of the Roundtable. My name is Dwayne Daniels, and today on the program, you will recall that on Tuesday, November the 12th, the National Commission for the Prohibition of Hate Speech Bill 2019 passed first reading at the Senate. The commission is to be known as the Independent National Commission for the Prohibition of Hate Speech. The bill seeks to establish a federal government agency to check and punish hate speech in Nigeria. The bill describes offenders as a person who uses, publishes, presents, produces, plays, provides, distributes, and or directs the performance of any material, written or visual. Such material must be capable of causing threat, abusive or insulting, or involves the use of threatening, abusive or insulting words or behavior. The bill also criminalizes ethnic hatred and ethnic hostility. Section 3 of that bill states that ethnic hatred means hatred against a group of persons from any ethnic group indigenous to Nigeria. So it also states that a person subjects another to harassment on the basis of ethnicity for the purposes of this section, where on ethnic grounds it justifiably engages in a conduct which has the purpose or effect of violating that other person's dignity or creates an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment for the person subjected to the harassment. Conduct shall be regarded as having the effect specified in subsection 1A or B of this section, if having regard to all circumstances, including in particular the perception of that person. Now, that bill has prescribes the maximum sentence of death by hanging. Yes, and in some cases, fine, imprisonment, fine of up to 10 million naira, or in other cases, imprisonment and fine. Now, in the case of a corporate entity under that law, every director, trustee, partner, and officer of that corporate entity shall be deemed guilty of the offense. You will understand what that means in the course of the program. Now, need I tell you, I've mentioned that the maximum sentence prescribed by this bill is death by hanging. Now, Nigeria is not the only country in the world where hate speech is criminalized. In 2017, Germany passed a Network Enforcement Act, which requires social media platforms to remove illegal content within 24 hours or risk fines of up to $56 million. Now, in that country, Facebook operates a deletion center with more than 1,200 content moderators. Now, this has raised fears of overblocking of even legal content. The British police in 2016 detained and questioned more than 3,300 people for grossly offensive comments on social media. And Singapore, on the other hand, has what it calls protection from online falsehood and manipulation bill. Now, the downside of this law is that in many of these countries where they already have something similar to this law, the law has been used against perceived opponents of government. The anti-hate law for tolerance and peaceful coexistence in Venezuela, which passed in 2017, has been used to prosecute journalists critical of Maduro's government. Russia, too, has copied Germany's Network Enforcement Act, and many people fear that critics of the Kremlin will be the target of this law. Now that Nigeria is doing this part, what is the fate of Nigerians, especially critics of government, if this bill scales through? We'll also, in the course of the program, be touching on the another bill that has passed first reading in the Senate. Is called the Protection from Internet Falsehood and Manipulation and Other Related Matters Bill 2019. Let me welcome my studio guests. I have this afternoon on the program the Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party in Ondo State, Mr. Zadok Agito. You're welcome on the program.
It's a pleasure being here with you, Dimitri Daniels.
I also have Barrister Wale Abimbola. You're welcome on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And another lawyer in the house, Barrister Femi Emmanuel. Madamori. I think I got that right now. Because when I hear Madamori, I'm always confused. I'm always wondering whether it's a Yoruba name. Let me begin from you, Barrister Madamori. what is your general thought about this law? The law seeking to establish an agency to check its speech in Nigeria.
In very simple words, I agree that there are very serious challenges of increasing ethnic hatred and religious intolerance in Nigeria, like other countries in the world. And I agree that we need to take some actions to curb this increasing tide. But I sincerely think this law is absolutely unnecessary. I think it is just a duplication, replication of some of the provisions of the existing laws that we have in Nigeria that will seem to be capable of taking care adequately of the problem sought to be tackled by this law. So I think it's absolutely unnecessary. Apart from what people consider the draconian punishment stipulated for certain offenses in the proposed bill, I think to me it's an unnecessary distraction. We already have adequate laws in place to take care of the challenges at hand. So the problem is not with the law, the problem is with those who are supposed to enforce the law.
Okay.
Mind you, the concern apparently, precipitating the bill are quite appreciated, but we think a little bit of research into our legislations will clearly indicate, will show that we don't need any other law. Let's implement the ones we have on the ground. Let me quickly say
you're saying we already have laws in place and I can take care of all these things.
Yes, I will dwell on that later, but let me say this. And I'm going to say this with all due apology and respect to my long-time and highly respected friend, Mr. Zadok. The politicians most often think they are the one that have the solution to our problem, but in actual fact, they are the creators of the problems. So when we are talking about ethnic hatred, religious intolerance, and what have you in Nigeria today, these are just the vehicles which most of the time, some, not all, of our unscrupulous politicians exploit to get to power. And it becomes very difficult when they get there to do away with it. So having said that, like I said, you already have enough laws to take care of some of these things. And mind you, if you are talking about hate speeches or hatred, I'm not sure that the solution to that is really promulgation of law. You don't decree love. Love is in the confine of morality. And that is why, no matter how much you really love the family setting as a judge, when husband and wife come to court and say they are tired of each other, you can't force them to go back home and start, living in harmony. You can only preach. You can't give an order to tell a man to go and consummate his marriage when he gets home. You don't. So there is the limitation of law. Much of what we are dealing with now is morality. And then having said that, for instance, I was saying that we already have enough laws, in my own opinion, to take care of some of these fundamental, concern precipitating this law. Let's take, for instance, Section 42 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, adequately providing for fundamental right for freedom from discrimination on the basis of sex, ethnicity, or religion. The law clearly stipulates that no one is to be discriminated against on the basis of his ethnicity, sex, or religion, or where he comes from. In government appointment or, in the conduct of government, no one is to be given unfair advantage because he comes from a particular ethnic group, and no one is to be discriminated against because he does not come from a particular ethnic group. It's clearly stated in Section 42, subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution. You go back to Section 14, subsection 3 of the same section, and I would love to read this, because that is one of the fundamental things, inserted into our Constitution by the lawmakers to engender national integration. And that is what we are lacking in Nigeria today. What does it say? Section 14, subsection 3. the composition of the government of the federation or any of its agencies and the conduct of its affairs shall be carried out in such a manner as to reflect the federal character of Nigeria and the need to promote national unity and also to conduct to command national loyalty, thereby ensuring that there shall be no predominance of persons from a few states or from a few ethnic or other sectional groups in that government or in its agency. Subsection 4 talks about the composition at the local government level. It is the failure of our government, successive government, to holistically apply the provisions of this law that we have a nation that is so divided today.
That's true.
What should it matter? Why should it matter that the Major Daniel is not from Bayelsa? Having lived in Bayelsa for almost 2 decades, why shouldn't you be entitled to everything that any other person resident in that state is?
Okay, okay. Let me turn to Barrister Walia Bimbola. There are some people who have stressed some of the positives of this law in line with global trends about the rise in hate speech, especially on mainstream media and on the social media. In fact, in February this year, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres notes that hate speech is a menace to democratic values, social stability and peace, is spread like wildfire through social media, the internet, and conspiracy theories. Now, listening to people like this, would you say that this law it will not be useful?
Thank you very much.
At a time like this.
Thank you very much. Our experience in Nigeria has taught us not to trust our leaders, unfortunately. I think it was Dr. Kofi Annan, may God rest his soul, that said genocide begins with the humiliation of just one person. Okay? Now, we've seen where hate speeches has led to genocides, as it were, particularly here in Africa, Rwanda. And this happened because those who ought to control things, when they ought to, refuse to act.
They took sides.
They took sides. I can cite instances of what has happened in Nigeria in the past years. I mean, in recent past. Just some months ago, a group of youths from the north said any state that does not accommodate Ruga, that there will be problems with what can be more hateful than that? Okay, there was a time when Southerners were given ultimatum to leave the north. What could be more hateful than that? And like my learned friend, Mr. Emmanuel said, it is our politicians that have been giving us all these problems. What time there was in this country, more than once, both under the military and under a civilian rule that never was. Under the military, Buhari and Idi Agbon were both Muslims. Nobody questioned it. The late Basharam Abiola and his running mate Babagana Kingibe were both Muslims. Nobody raised any issue until these things began. Until politicians began to use this to cause divisions between us. Now, so what we are saying is, desirable as it may appear, there are already laws in existence that have taken care of virtually everything that Senator Sabi Abdullahi, like I jokingly said, I said in the Nigerian street parlance, when we say somebody Sabi, that means it connotes knowledge and wisdom. But it appears this Senator Sabi does not Sabi.
Sabi.
It's either under Sabis or over Sabis. The feelings of Nigerians. Laws are meant to legislators are meant to legislate people's feelings, moralities into existence. I was.
So you're on the same page with.
I was in this studio some years ago, when the National Assembly under Senator David Mark made laws proscribing the practice of homosexuality in Nigeria. People were questioning, their right that look, you cannot determine somebody's sexual orientation. I said, look, we are Africans. And that was one of the most applauded laws that the National Assembly has made since 1989. That look, what they have simply promulgated into law was the Africanness in us.
The culture.
The culture, what we take as the Africans in us. So I think, with all due respect, that the intention of this law, what is generating all this controversy is the intention. Look at the countries we have cited, maybe with the exception of Germany. Most of these countries appear to be countries that have the tendency to abuse rights. Even Russia.
The authoritarian.
I'm not sure any country, any liberal country wants to be like North Korea, for example. Okay, so I think this law, there are already laws that have taken care of issues like this. We are in Adaba Studios, Adaba cannot just broadcast anything because there are laws that for every right there are limitations. No right is absolute.
The NBC has
the NBC, there is always a regulator somewhere that we have to call anybody to order. We know that today, and I agree perfectly, that today you see all sorts of things on the social media. The good, the bad, the sublime, the ridiculous.
And some people don't use their real names.
Yes. There was a day when people woke up in Nigeria and started having their bath with salt because somebody circulated some falsehood on social media.
Okay, but let me talk to Zadok now. The fear of many people who are against this bill is that it could be used to go after opponents of government. Would you say that this fear is justified?
Thank you, Dimeji, for having me. And I do submit to the position raised by the two learned members of this platform. I think that such a bill at this time is an underscoring of the lack of understanding of our political leadership and even of those who have proposed this bill, of the issues of governance in general. You cannot legislate morals.
Oh, love.
You cannot. What you can do is to provide a society that provides at least a very high level of social justice. Most times when, apart from some very far between times when people express hate, what we've classified as hate speech, for deliberate purpose of subverting government, of destroying society. Most often in Nigeria, when Nigerians cry out, it's because of an injustice in the system that has not been dealt with by the system, that has forced them to be at their own mercy. And I use an example. Would they classify it as hate speech if I get angry because somebody has driven his cattle into my farm and has destroyed it, and I get angry with that particular ethnic unit and I voice my anger? This law will not make provision for the man who instigated that anger in me, who has caused me to verbalize what I feel inside. Naturally, people will go to the police when they feel that their rights has been infringed. And then they would also resort to go to the law courts when they feel that their rights has been infringed upon. But in proposing this bill, government is taking up a position of omnipotence. It's taking up, and I do hope that this bill is signed into law could be retroactive. I think that's the word.
Yeah.
If we could backdate its effect to 2003, when a certain person who has now become the president of the country actually did say that the baboon and the something would be in blood, because a lot of Nigerians lost their lives at that time. We must stop playing the role of God in discharging our position as legislators and as people in government. We must always keep asking questions. Why would Nigerians hate themselves? There are 4 or 5 of us in the studio. We are not from the same mother. We don't have any reason to feel insecure amongst each other. But immediately you introduce injustice into this system, nature mandates that those who feel unjustly treated will either verbalize their anger or take action against those who have caused the injustice. Barrister Emmanuel did mention something. The law stipulates the federal character that must be enforced by law to ensure that there is social justice, there is power justice, there is equal and fair opportunities for every Nigerian, that causes people to become less trusting and less united as Nigerians. And so if those who have created a problem will not take responsibility, but will sit in the comfort of the Senate and then look at ordinary Nigerians and say, why are they complaining? What they are doing with this bill is that they will mandate Nigerians to keep silent even when they feel hot. Because the core reason why hate speeches have become more rampant is because the people are no longer comfortable. And people that are not comfortable, even if it was in the United States of America, that people are treated the way our government treats us in Nigeria, even if it is in Russia that we mentioned earlier, or in any other developed nations, the human instinct is for people to respond by protecting themselves. And sometimes this verbalized anger may be a symptom for you as government to know that these people are being unfairly treated. Now with this bill, what it means is that even when you feel bad, you will rather consider, my response would it not be classified? So you suffer in silence.
Okay, let me turn to Barrister Modamere. The bill states that an individual has committed an offense if they intend to stir up ethnic hatred. How do you determine the intention of the individual? You're the lawyer.
Well, like we always say in law,
if this law passes, because I want to know, how do you determine the intention of the individual?
In the first place, like we say in law, intention could only be determined by the circumstantial facts.
Okay.
The circumstances surrounding an act or omission. Because in actual fact, only God knows the intention of anyone. That is what we say in law. But sometimes from the circumstantial evidence, from the surrounding facts, you can determine or impute a particular intention accurately to an act or omission done or omitted to be done by somebody. Now, have you said that, Mr. Dimeji? Earlier we all agree that this law appeared to be an unnecessary replication or duplication of some of the laws we already have in place, which are not even being enforced in the first place. Please permit me again, for the purpose of adequately educating our audience, to make reference to some of the definitional sections of this law, and then make reference to some of the existing laws we have containing almost the same definitions and already stipulating punishment for such offenses. This law says hate speech is, and I'm quoting, comments that insult people for their religion, ethnic, linguistic affiliation, and racial content, among others, and provides further that a person who uses, publishes, presents, produces, plays, provides, distributes, and or directs the performance of any material, written and or visual, which is threatening, abusive, or insulting, or involve the use of threatening, abusive, or insulting words or behavior, commit an offense if such person intends, like you said earlier, thereby to stir up ethnic hatred. Now, please juxtapose this section with the provision of Section 26 of the Cybercrime Prohibition and Prevention Act of 2015, already in place in Nigeria, which states, among other things, that look, a person who with intent B threatens through a computer system or network 1. Persons for the reason that they belong to a group distinguished by race, color, descent, national or ethnic origin, as well as religion, if used as a pretext for any of these factors, or a group of persons which is distinguished by any of these characteristics. C. Insults publicly through a computer system or network. 1. Persons for this reason that they belong to a group distinguished by race, color, descent, or national or ethnic origin, as well as religion, if used as a pretext for this factor. A group of persons which is distinguished by any of these characteristics, or D. Distributes or otherwise makes available through a computer system or network to the public material which denies or approves of justifies acts constituting genocide or crimes against humanity, commits an offense, and shall be liable on conviction to imprisonment for a term not more than 5 years, or to a fine of not more than 10 million naira, or to both such. If you look at the punishment section of this law, bro, it's the same sanctions of 5 years or punishment of 10 million naira or both. Are you therefore going to say that we don't have something similar in our laws already dealing with this? Are you really implementing what is already on the ground?
Why then do you think they're coming up with this? Why is the senator coming up with this law?
The senator is a proxy.
I wouldn't actually want to condemn everything about it. Like I said, the intention is noble, but it will appear that a little more industrial on the part of the senator would have taught him that. Look,
If he had done his
a
homework.
little bit of homework, that there are already existing laws. Now, I don't want to impute any motive. I'm not saying there is none, but let me keep it at that for now.
Yeah.
Then, we have just talked about a particular provision of a law. Look at the Electoral Act itself in Section 102, prohibiting campaign along ethnic and religious lines, which is still tailored towards what we are saying.
And most politicians are even guilty of that.
That is it. In fact, it has started now.
Maybe including
It has started now in 2023. Look at what it says. Section 102 of the Electoral Act 2010 has amended. Any candidate, person, or association who engages in campaigning or broadcasting based on religious, tribal, or sectional reason for the purpose of promoting or opposing a particular political party or the election of a particular candidate is guilty of an offense under this act, and on convictions are liable to maximum fine of 1 million naira or imprisonment for 12 months or to both. What are we saying? Having cited the provision of the Constitution, the Electoral Act, and the Cyber Crime Prohibition and Prevention Act of 2015, we are now sure that there are laws already made consciously,
including existing laws on defamation.
even criminal laws.
But yes, criminal
I saw a
defamation.
provision that prohibits spreading false news. So we already have. Even if you think what we have is not adequate, are you implementing what we have already?
They are as good as the person with their written.
Honestly speaking,
Okay, quickly. Let me borrow your copy of the Constitution. I left mine in my office.
All right.
Quickly. Now, some of the lawyers who have spoken against this law have been quoting Section 39, which says that every person, so Section 39, subsection 1 states that every person shall be entitled to freedom of expression, including freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart ideas and information without interference. Now, in subsection 3 of that particular section, it states that nothing in this section shall invalidate any law that is reasonable, justifiable in a democratic society. That means that any law that is deemed to be reasonable, justifiable can still come up, irrespective of the provision of this section. Now, this particular law, you're the lawyer. Can you say this law is reasonable, justifiable?
I have said it in my opening that freedom anywhere in the world is not absolute. Every right,
there must be responsibility.
every right goes with exceptions, duties and responsibilities. However, in the case of this law, and this is where I will vehemently disagree with the sentiments of my learned friend, Mr. Emmanuel Modamori, to the effect that the intention may be noble. As far as I am concerned, the intention here is not noble, and I will tell you why. Just a week or so ago, some 30-something aides of the vice president or in the presidency.
But the president said they were redeployed when he came back from.
No. So, some aides in the presidency serving in the office of the vice president were eased out of their offices.
Redeployed to a new ministry.
Yes, and we were told that the government was trying to cut costs. Now, a government that is trying to cut costs now bring it for an operative to that government because Senator Sabi is a member of an arm of this government. Now, has brought a motion or a bill intended to create a commission for the purpose of hate speech. To me, that stands logic in the head. That's where I'm thinking of. Maybe it is a question of over Sabi or under Sabi or something.
And he says
national orientation.
We have the kind of orientation. We have the Minister of Information. So what?
And it's even stated. It's even stated.
The NBC is there.
Stated in the bill that the headquarters of the agency will be in Abuja with offices in all the states of the federation.
Competing again with the NOA.
They have to hire staff.
There will be directors. There will be PSCs. There will be several things. Again, why we are cutting costs. That is where I say the intention, as far as I'm concerned, is not noble. You see, and again, in doing that again, we begin to talk about federal character. We begin to talk about. I think there are, like you said, there are existing laws. No law is absolute. Now, Now you're talking about reasonable justiciability or justifiability of it. As far as I am concerned, what is reasonable? Like one of my professors in the university used to say, is that even objectivity itself is subjective to the man who says it's objective. In other words, nothing is ever objective.
Nothing is
as far as I'm concerned, the reasonability or the justifiability of it does not exist. One, it's a duplication of function of existing laws, which has taken care of, like the provision of the law that my learned friend read out in the Electoral Act. The law is as good as the paper on which it is written. I'm sorry, the learned, a very learned senior officer of government or the federal government campaigned during the election using religion, using ethnicity. And we saw what happened in the build-up to the election in Lagos, for example. That the ethnic card was flown here and there. We were asked, for example, in the South, where we were asked to vote for a particular candidate because
for our son.
For a particular candidate because his running mate is our son. Obviously, we seem to be obeying, we seem to be observing these laws more in their violation than their compliance. Okay, and that is why I think this law is like reenacting. That's why people are. Immediately we heard of this provision. Our mind went to Decree 4 and Decree 2.
Okay. Let me turn to Zabok. Now, the maximum sentence prescribed by this bill is death by hanging. Is that not stretching it too far?
Obviously, we don't need to over-explain this. Its intention, or the intention of those who used the senator as a proxy to bring this bill to the National Assembly, because they don't want to back that bill lest it be seen that a certain person is trying to silence the other ethnic regions in the country to push a particular agenda. The intention is to ensure that to Nigerians that they know that silence is commanded. It's silence that is commanded. Now, once this bill goes into law, it will be impossible to raise an objection even against injustice that is going to be perpetrated by this government. That is why they are putting the penalty as the maximum penalty. That means that if, for instance,
because even part of the provision is that if you can't even say things that could affect the performance of any government,
you can't even question government.
Yes, that's it.
You can't question government, and this is the intention. If you study the 48 laws of power, which I am sure that those that are in charge of this government and those that rule Nigeria across across multiple sections, irrespective of political party affiliation, use these principles to govern the people. We are not in a democracy, because the key underlying element of a democracy is that there must be freedom of expression and freedom and right to choose as the people desire. The proponents of democracy have this in mind, that each and every individual that is born into a nation is not born into that nation subjected to the instruction of government. It's not government that gives our parents instructions to give birth to us. And you don't need government's validation or certification before you are born. But there must be a law guiding our interpersonal relationship. Now, what this government is doing is that they are bringing a law that subsumes your right of existence under government. That is to say that even though you are born in Nigeria, your right to question your Nigerianness or question those that are in charge of your government is taken away. Because then people will become afraid. In our homes, we will teach our children, Ojeshorai, Maloso, because they will use people as examples. And they will put the maximum penalty. The few people that are going to be caught or that are going to be accused of having violated this provision of the law are going to be made scapegoats. Not because they want to heal the country, but to set an example to others that you dare not try. That's why look at Showore's issue. Even when a court of competent jurisdiction releases the person, look at Dasuki's issue. They will not, because the intention is that in government, in governance of the people, there are no emotions, and these people are without emotion. So they will put Nigerians in a place where Nigerians will teach their children how to keep silent. And then in the years to come, we will have a culture of a docile population that is intrinsically within themselves. They will be very angry, but there will be no opportunity for expression. And gradually, this same set of people are going to move into the genocide that they are trying to prevent. Is what they are going to push in the people. Because as long as people don't have an opportunity to express themselves in anger, then there's no reason for discussion. If I don't show you my displeasure, how would you apologize to me? How would I feel that, okay, my pressure within has been eased? And that's why this is a dangerous bill. For those that are saying for political reasons, let us go ahead. Don't forget that there is no government that is going to be in power forever. And so when the changes, what would be the repercussion of this law? Those who propose this law and that are using this Senator Sabi or I know Sabi as a tool, because they can classify this as hate speech. The senator to push it. The senator is a proxy for his system. He is not pushing that bill because it affects his constituency. He's not pushing it because it affects his senatorial district. He's pushing it because it affects the agenda of those who are supporting it. And what they are going to do is that, for instance, is alleged that the president wants a third term.
Let's not
It will be. I'm not going there. It will then be classified.
Let's not speculate.
Let's not speculate. Let's assume, if I may close, let's assume that a Fulani man comes into my field.
Let's not speculate.
So I will not be. That means that if, for instance, there's a violation of my space within I would have to first of all consider what does the law say. So my anger, I will bottle it. I won't express it. Because even with the police or with the law, you won't get justice, because even when you get angry, you can't even complain in anger to a police officer. And that's the danger. We cannot allow the social character of a nation to be placed under the whims and caprices of a law. You must allow freedom of expression. And I was watching TV yesterday. I was watching Kosovo versus England. And I said, when did Kosovo become a country? Very recently.
Old Yugoslavia.
It was part of old Yugoslavia. Yeah. That means that Kosovo now has an expression of saying we are a country because they were allowed to talk. They were allowed to complain. If we don't allow citizens to complain, how then do we say that our children will not be enslaved?
Okay, moving forward, let's look at the second bill we're considering on the program today. That's the Protection from Internet Falsehoods and Manipulation and Other Related Matters Bill 2019. But before then, let's listen to a senior advocate of Nigeria, Ade Gorua, on what he thinks about this particular bill.
We are in a situation whereby we begin to suspect that maybe there is some hidden agenda on the part of government. Otherwise, it's just like I'm sitting here. The capacity for my expression is because I'm entitled to speak. That right is fundamental. The right of expression, the capacity to speak, is inalienable. It's attached to my humanity as a human being. You can't padlock my mouth. You can't restrain me. The restraints I have are already codified in various legislations in this country. So I am at risk when I say anything that I cannot defend, because I know the consequences in law exist that may damnify me either in damages or some form of restriction of my liberty if I'm involved in any extremism or fake news or lies. So when we get to a situation whereby government is jittery, when we get to a situation whereby citizens are told not to talk, then you fear as if maybe there's something else that we don't know. Otherwise, in every society where there are laws, you operate according to that law. In this country, people have lost their lives and liberty to fight for constitutional rights, to fight for fundamental rights, and we can't take ourselves back to the dark ages whereby government is involved in regulating freedom of speech. And I'm saying this because our constitution is very clear. It is the organic document in this country. And every agency, be it the executive, legislative, or judicial, must give respect to the constitution. Our constitution says in section 22 And it's very clear that the press, in particular, should have the responsibility and should be free to hold government responsible and accountable to the people of Nigeria. And in particular, Section 22 mentioned the mass media. And so the operative word there is that they should be free. If I'm to hold you accountable, if I'm to make you answerable to the people, how do you then engage in censorship to supervise me in how I make you accountable? I mean, some contradictions. I'm supposed to be a journalist, a Nigerian, a citizen, probe government, ensure transparency, avoid corruption and waste, and hold you accountable to the people of Nigeria for your programs. And then you said, I can only do that if I allow you to regulate me, if I allow you to supervise me. So the right is no longer available. So the point we make, therefore, is this. It's my position that Section 22 of the Constitution covers the social media because it talks about mass media. Secondly, the regulation you talk about for the social media already exists in various legislations in this country. We have the Cybercrime Act, Section 24, clearly talks about matters relating to fake news, matters relating to insulting public officers, or anything you say to injure the reputation of people. And it has consequences, 7 million naira fine, and in extreme cases, 25 million naira or 10 years imprisonment. We have the criminal code, which also criminalizes anything that you cannot defend. But generally, even in civil actions, the greatest threat to anything that you do which is not correct is that you will be damnified for it. If I issue any statement which I cannot defend, whether on social media, whether in the traditional media, I will be liable. And so I just give you an example. See the challenge and threat to what the government is about to do. In this country, somebody went somewhere to buy some things, and then unknown to him that there were cameras everywhere, and then he decided to flaunt his office and started to slap the lady who was to sell the things to him and dragging her and threatening to deploy police. And unknown to the person, this thing had been captured. Before you knew it, it emerged on the social media. And there was outcry all over the nation. If there was no social media, if there was no opportunity for that to get to public domain, Senator Abba Moro would have even by now silenced that.
Okay, that was Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Ebun. They were making all his position on the Protection from Internet Falsehood and Manipulation and other related matters bill 2019. Now, like I said about the first bill we talked about, Nigeria will not be the first country where social media is regulated. Eritrea is an African country, is known as the most secretive country in Africa. China, for instance, Saudi Arabia, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Germany, the list goes on. Now, but the fear also is that in many of these countries, the law has been abused. Take, for instance, in Eritrea in 2014, the country jailed more than 24 journalists. Iran, as of 2013, blocked nearly 50% of the top 500 visited websites worldwide, including YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Google. Now, let me turn to Barrister Wale Abimbola. Is this kind of law, is this the way to go in Nigeria at this time?
Thank you very much. You mentioned Eritrea. I'm not sure that's the kind of country Nigeria wants to be in. A country like North Korea, I will mention again. I'm not sure that's the kind of country, the company we want to be in. Look,
there's Saudi Arabia, there's Iran.
Like Saudi Arabia that only allowed, just last year, allowed women to vote. To drive. So I'm sure we don't want to be in that company, with due respect. But look at it. The pogrom that Hitler used the law to kill those he killed. You know, any country that wants to muzzle free speech is already degenerating into a dictatorship. So I think, and I will agree perfectly with the submission of the learned Silk Ebunadu Borua, that look, that lives were lost to have the democracy that we claim we have today. Even when many of the beneficiaries of the democracy were dining with those that were being fought, many people lost their lives. Some of us were young students, activists. We knew how we were chased around. You know, so it is not the kind of society we envisaged. Agreed. And a very good example has been given as to how to deal with these issues of falsehood on the social media by no less a person than the vice president, who recently said he was ready to waive his immunity to pursue a civil action against some persons and organizations that is considered to have published falsehoods against him. I do not think there is a higher authority ordinarily. He's professor of law and a senior advocate of Nigeria and the vice president of the country by the grace of God today. So I think the law is so clear. There are existing laws. If the intentions are altruistic, there are many things to look after in this country. The petroleum, the oil bill has been before the National Assembly for God knows when. This bill, I'm sure you are aware that this bill that Mr. Sabi is trying to reintroduce in the Senate was killed last year, 2018.
No, this particular one is sponsored by Musa San. Yeah,
something similar.
Okay.
By a senator was killed by in the
same senator. These are two different bills. This particular bill is sponsored by Musa Sani, and he also pushed the bill in the last section of the Senate. He's trying to reintroduce the bill now.
Yeah, he is trying to reintroduce it now by wanting to create a commission.
New provision.
By wanting to create a commission where people will be struggling to get appointed and other things. So I wonder what exactly the intention of these lawmakers are. There are too many things begging for attention.
Okay, because of our time.
This legislation that passed the Minimum Wage Act earlier in this year. As we speak, it has not been implemented. And what concerns it most is how to muzzle our right to express ourselves. Sometime in 1997 or 96, the late Anthony Ojarugbule went to invade the house of late Papa Jashi Nowo. And he rudely asked the old man, "You say you are fighting for democracy. What is democracy?" The man said, "You are talking to me. I am talking to you. That is democracy. And that is what we don't want. Let us continue to talk to ourselves. In democracies, you say the good, the bad, and even the nonsense are tolerated. And when you say trash, there are laws meant to deal with them."
Okay. Now, social media has been used by many, especially young people in Nigeria, to make money. There's blogging and all of that, online marketing. Now, what impact do you think this kind of law could have on ventures like that?
It will definitely limit the willingness.
Just for instance, in Germany, the law states that Facebook, especially on Facebook, that Facebook must block any content that is deemed illegal.
Absolutely. Facebook also has a responsibility to the world. But the thing is that when you muzzle social media has been like an outlet for Nigerian citizens to forget their issues. We talk to each other more now. We may not talk to each other physically, but we make friends all across the world. You may have an issue today and somebody who is not even physically known to you can solve that problem tomorrow. So social media must be allowed to grow. Now, I am amazed that a young man will create such a world influencing organization somewhere, and some old men in Nigeria and some people who have not been able to create even a shop that sells anything sensibly are now looking at mitigating the capacity of such a media. If they believe that they could have done something great, why don't they create something great with their own laws and parameters? As long as we are in this country, I think federal government and whosoever is seeking the promulgation of this kind of obnoxious laws should know that if you take Gaddafi away from Libya, you have the crisis you are having today. If you take away the freedom of Nigerians to engage each other on social media, we fight each other on social media, we still make friends on social media, you are going to take away from them one of those elements that has been preventing war and genocide.
Okay, quickly, because of our time, this law, this social media bill prescribes 150,000 or 3 months imprisonment, and in some cases, 10 million naira. Now, there's this one that amuses me, Barrister Modamore. In the case of firms, say for instance, MTN or Glo is your telecom service provider, and you're deemed to have posted something that is considered forced. Now, the NCC, that is the National Communications Commission, which is the regulator in that industry, will be told to give you what is called access service blocker. So that MTN or whatever telecom service that you use your phone can block whatever you posted. If they do not do that, now they will be liable on conviction to a fine not more than 10 million naira for each day during any part of which that order is not fully complied with. What do you think about this?
Let me see.
That means the telecoms are also in trouble if this law passes. For what I post,
Everybody is in trouble.
MTN, Glo, or Airtel may be in trouble, and they will be paying 10 million naira for each day that they refuse to block me.
Or maybe if Adaba decides to have a telecom outfit tomorrow, Adaba too may be in trouble. Or any of us, we are all in trouble.
Let me say that I'm not as comfortable as my colleagues on this program with some of the trends we are having on our social media. They are really, really disturbing. Some of the things we circulate on social media are clearly inciting and have the capacity to have caused some very serious destruction before we take the remedial action. So just like we said about hatred earlier, there are serious need for us to begin to think of how to curb some of the deliberately inciting, the value degrading things going on the social media. But like I said, I doubt if the solution to all this will just be within the realm of the law. For instance, talking about the erosion of our social value, the African moral, it comes to the same issue. What is the role of religion, for instance, that we claim so much to profess in this part of the world with some of the content of what we're having on social media, which could constitute a risk to some of our children. So it's not really about fake news or something. There are some content of the social media that I think is just quite, seriously speaking, if you permit me to say this, not part of.
Or quickly, because of our time, should telecom service provider be held liable for that?
Liable?
Criminal vicarious liability. I think that is not too proper in law.
10 million naira for each day that they refuse to block anybody
I just think
who is deemed to have posted any false information.
No, if you are deemed to have posted what is not appropriate, who sit down as the judge? Who then sit down as the judge and giving instruction without you having been taken through the judicial process?
Who determines it?
Who determines it? Do you give instruction for punishment before you are subjected to some form of, hearing and given the freedom? For instance, if I post what is true, believe me, sincerely speaking, no matter how offensive it is to you, it is the truth. It's not my business.
And it's not false.
If it is true, then it's not false. So that is the truth. So for you to tell me to pull it down, and then if I don't pull it down, you hold somebody responsible to me, is abnormal. But seriously speaking, what I think we should emphasize on is the moral content of some of the things we post. During the Nigeria-South Africa problem recently, some of the twisted videos that
we're not
serious Christ.
We're not sure.
But like I said, having known the problem with social media, I think we all know that some of those things could be taken with a pinch of salt.
Okay,
the aspect of
because of our time,
our time is the aspect in destroying the moral fabrics of the
society. Let me thank you, Barrister Femi Modamore. Thank you very much for coming on the Roundtable. Barrister Wale Abimbola, thank you very much for coming. And Mr. Zadok Aginto, thank you very much for coming. My name is Major Daniels, and next Monday is another time on the Roundtable. Thank you very much.
Politics is a good thing, but But with the attendant intricacies and the many sound bites, it gets confusing. At Adaba 88.9 FM, it is our job to sift through the noise, helping you make sense of it all. This is why we welcome you to our world, where we help make politicians accountable to you.
The world moves at a fast pace, and news breaks with the same speed.
The longest trip of the Donald Trump administration is now underway.
Not all stations can keep up. At Adaba FM, we not only give you news at the speed of nanosecond, but we also break it down with up-to-date analysis, informed opinions, and distinct professionalism. That's why you love us.